Hello everyone on Holy Saturday from St Peter's in Livingston, Scotland. There's an ancient homily, a sermon, for today that begins like this. What is happening? Today is a great silence over the earth, a great silence and stillness, a great silence because the King sleeps. Today everything is very still, and the ancient words are literally being played out across the entire globe. Major cities are, for the most part, silent and still. City streets, normally bustling with activity and people, are deserted. The skies are silent. There is also a strange, palpable silence and emptiness in church buildings today that's always very striking. Today, nothing seems to be happening. That's because nothing is happening. Why is there this lull in what is going on in the story? It's because it's Shabbat, Sabbath. The corpse of Jesus was buried quickly as the Sabbath was about to begin at sunset the day before, last night. In a sense, Jesus was observing the Sabbath in a strange kind of way. It is as if God himself, as it were, was celebrating Sabbath by resting and doing nothing. The next day, Sunday, will begin this evening at sunset when we celebrate the Easter Vigil. By the time the first visitors will arrive at the tomb tomorrow morning, it's already empty. We assume then he woke up, the resurrection occurred, at sunset the night before when Shabbat ended and the new day began. If that was the case, where did he go? What was he doing all night? There is an ancient tradition that the first place Messiah goes to is the shady realm of the dead, to set the long imprisoned, unhappy residents there free, thus destroying the power of death forever. Who knows? I've another idea. Given that his mother is named as having been at the execution site at Skull Hill, along with a small group of others, and named again as being in the locked upper room 50 days later on the first day of Shavuot, Jewish Feast of Weeks, as we call it Pentecost now, after the resurrection, it's a bit odd there's no reference to a post-resurrection encounter with Mary, his mum. We assume she must have been present at some of the appearances, but there's no specific record of that or of a personal encounter. Something else that's missing is from the items described in the empty tomb. Jewish men would have been buried in their prayer shawls. It was part of their daily clothing and particularly special for a practicing Jew and indeed a rabbi. There is a reference to a face cloth covering rolled up by itself away from the rest of the grave clothes, and some have suggested this was the prayer shawl, the talit, but the texts don't say that. However, there is at least one of the story in which his prayer shawl is specifically identified as a fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. More about that another time. The new body of Jesus seems to have risen naked as the grave shroud is left behind. We assume he took his prayer shawl with him. There's no sign of it. Ignatian spirituality invites us to tap into our imaginations as we pray, to try and sense what is happening deep within our own feelings as we pray and imagine. It's as if the stories read us, and not us who read them. And in doing so, they enter into the story of our own lives and life experience. When we pray in this way, surprising, astonishing things can happen deep within us. Faith grows and changes, maybe comes to life for the first time, as we encounter the one who died and is now alive forever, deep within our hearts. I invite you again to imagine with me and to listen to The Woman in Blue. Mother, mother, wake up. What is it, John? She stirs only slightly. She is still sleeping heavily with grief. Mother, it's not John, it's me. Wake up. There's something about the voice, a familiar tone, the way only he said mother. She opens her eyes and sees him sitting at the foot of her bed. He's smiling and looking absolutely radiant. What a wonderful dream, she's thinking to herself. I'm sorry for what you had to see, mother. She finds herself talking in the dream now. It's okay. I know you're fine now. That's all that matters. There are things I need to tell you, he says. Are you properly awake? Yes, dear, still believing she's in a dream. I've met Joseph. You have? He says to tell you he loves you very much and is waiting to see you again. He says to tell you he's crafting you a box for the jewels. A what? For what? The dream seems to have taken an odd turn, as dreams do. For the jewels. Jewels for your crown, mother. In the dream she laughs. He always told me I was more beautiful than the Queen of Sheba had ever been. So you are, mother. But until the day you're crowned, you have to look after not just John, but all of them. They need you to be mum for them, to make sure they eat and sleep, just like you did for me. Well, I hope they'll listen to me more than you did sometimes. They both laugh now. It was here she noticed something about the person she was seeing. His robe was clean, bleached white, shining like the sun almost, so she knew it was a dream. She remembered a crazy story Simon had told her about a mountain and Moses and Elijah and a voice from a cloud. The sleeves of the robe were longer than they would have been if it had been him, and his hands were covered up, and his face was shining, so different from when she last saw him. He was familiar, but very different. I've a gift for you, mother. What's that? It's my prayer shawl. Let me put it on you. There. From now on, you'll be known as the woman in blue. Strange, it seemed she could feel the touch of the cloth on her head. She recognised a smell, his smell. Slowly, slowly, something was dawning. Is this really a dream? She wondered. She said, every time I put it on, I'll think of you and I'll pray for you. She put the cloth to her nose and breathed in a strong aroma of myrrh. No need to pray for me now, my mother, but pray for all my friends. They'll need that. I have to go now to see Simon and the others. But before I go, give me your hands. I stretched them out to the figure now starting to fade in the light of dawn pouring into the room. He took hold of my hands. He looked at me, dark eyes looking, searching deep into me as he had when a child. He said, Mother, pray. Pray for them. He took my hands into his and joined them together as you do when you pray, his hands now around mine, as if we were now praying as one. I could feel the palms of his hands on the back of mine and scabs or lumps in the middle of them. I looked at our hands, wondering. He saw the question in my eyes and smiled, and with such love said, Mother, never, ever doubt. And then he winked and was gone. The door crashes open. Mary Magdalene's voice. He's gone. The tomb's empty. She stops dead in her tracks when she sees a familiar white and blue garment around Mary's head and shoulders and says, Where did you get his shawl? In the scriptures written long after the resurrection event, there are fragments of ancient liturgical texts and songs. One of those texts was possibly proclaimed or sung at the Easter Vigil just before adults were plunged 3 times beneath the waters of baptism. Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine upon you. Was the resurrection just a dream, wishful thinking, a fantasy, a crutch offered to people when they can't cope with life or the reality of death? Or is it all true? Only you or I can decide that for ourselves. The strange thing is that it is only when we take that step of trust in the risen one, that it is true, do we discover deep in our hearts it really is true, and we wake up. Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and let Christ shine on you. The Lord is risen. Happy Easter.